Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwan and you were watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about Spacemarine chapters as we get into the Subjugators. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day, and if you like what we do, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Subjugators. The Subjugators are a loyalist Space Marine successor chapter of the Imperial Fist. The chapter was founded only a few centuries before the 13th Black Crusade, sometime during the 23rd or 24th founding. The Subjugators chapter is listed in the Mythos Angelica Mortis, a tome of ancient Imperial knowledge detailing the Astartes Praeses, the 20 chapters of Astartes, founded to guard the stellar region surrounding the Eye of Terror. They are based on the world of Xanax in the Segmentum Solar, and have the honor of defending the eastern marshes of the Segmentum, guarding against enemy invasions towards Holy Terra. In addition, the chapter has significant obligations with regards to defense of the Cadian Gate, and most of its duties are split between operations in these two regions. Through their long past, the Subjugators have primarily wore medium green power armor, with their chapter badge being a black clenched fist, reminiscent of their parent legion, the Imperial Fist, centered on a field of medium green. The Subjugators follow the traditions of the Imperial Fist in many regards, especially in the veneration of Rogaldorn, their Primarch, but in many ways they share a lot in common with the Black Templars. They exhibit a similar zeal to hunt down and utterly destroy all potential threats to the Imperium, although their prescribed duties in the Segmentum Solar and Obscurus preclude them from undertaking a full-scale crusade pursued by the Black Templars. As such, they have little patience for any signs of weakness or corruption, and as a chapter, they have little compassion for the Imperium's common people. They are focused solely on the destruction of the Emperor's enemies, and view anything impeding on that goal, such as foolish or weak civilians getting in the way of military operations, as obstacles to be ignored or even eliminated if necessary. This attitude has caused friction with other chapters, such as the Salamanders and the Ultramarines, who hold very different views of the relative importance of the Imperium's population. The Battle Brothers of the Subjugators are known to be unrelenting in their prosecution of the enemies of mankind, always attacking with overwhelming force and eschewing many of the more subtle arts of war, such as infiltration and hit-and-run tactics. Their methods are uncompromising and savage, often resulting in not only the destruction of the enemy's troops, but the total elimination of their non-combat assets, ensuring that the foe will not return to threaten the Imperium again. When called upon to reconquer worlds captured by the enemy, the Subjugators have often taken such extreme methods that nothing of the world themselves remains to be liberated, and because of this, only the most desperate Imperial commanders request their aid against any invader. On several occasions, the Subjugators have been known to defeat an occupying force, only to purge the formerly oppressed human population for their collaboration with the enemy, leaving little behind them with which the Imperium can rebuild. The chapter's name of Subjugators is a well-earned moniker. One of the first Subjugator campaigns recorded in Imperial history is the Second Albonian Genocide. This was when Inquisitor Helen Jens of the Ordo Hereticus declared the entire population of the Albonian subsector Diabolus Incalculus, and gathered together an Imperial Crusade army that included elements of the Subjugators, Red Hunters, Warbearers chapters, as well as the Order of the Blue Robe and the Order of the Black Sepulchre of the Adeptus Sororitas. The Crusade raged for a decade before the Inquisitor declared the subsector's crimes washed away by the tide of blood. Many years later, Imperial records indicate that the Subjugators chapter were infected by a xeno species known as the Selkin. The Selkin were a little-known intelligent alien race who attacked a company of the Subjugators during a protracted campaign in the Technetium Belt. The unique reproduction cycle of this species made their complete eradication very difficult to achieve. Several Astartes of the Subjugators' Third Company were infected by this insidious xenos, who breed by a viral dissemination. Their DNA infects the body of the host, where it will literally reshape the host in its own image, that of a flabby and semi-amorphous humanoid, with eyes spread randomly around its head, this being the Selkin's true form. Though the Space Marine's enhanced genetic makeup and immune system proved largely resilient to this threat, 20 battle brothers of the Third Company were lost in the early stages of the campaign, as they were slowly mutated into new, hideous forms. The chapter's apothecaries identified the threat, but too late to save those battle brothers already affected by the Selkin's infection. The infected brethren that survived the conflict escaped and are assumed to be at large in the galaxy to this day. There is little other information of this obscure xenospecies. The Subjugators contributed a single squad and several armored vehicles to the Damocles Gulf Crusade against the forces of the encroaching Tau Empire in the Ultima Segmentum. The same could be said when the Subjugators sent one company to take part in the Aculus Crusade, a massive war of reconquest that was fought on 3 fronts with the newly rediscovered Jericho Reach, which is located in the eastern fringe of the galaxy in the Ultima Segmentum. Late in the 41st millennium, the Guild Fathers of the Imperial Merchant Guild of the Inca sector of the Ultima Segmentum fought a war against the Void Dragons, a group of Eldari pirates who had been sponsored by rivals within the Inca Guild to prey on the Inca sector shipping and commerce. The Subjugators chapter was called to assist by the Imperial Sector Command. The Sons of Antaeus also answered the call, and the Eldari were ultimately defeated and forced to withdraw. Being no strangers to alien, the Subjugators encountered a previously unknown xenospecies that rose from the dark oceans of the world of Trima Secundus and set about enslaving the human population, dragging millions to their watery demise. Inquisitor Gunderman of the Ordo Xenos, alongside the Subjugators and the Deathwatch Space Marines, led a xenocidal campaign against the aliens and cast down their ocean cities. During the 13th Black Crusade, the Subjugators chapter dispatched 3 companies directly to Cadia, within days of receiving word that Abaddon the Despoiler had launched its latest Black Crusade upon the Imperium, vowing that the remainder of the chapter's resources would be mustered as soon as was possible. The chapter arrived aboard 2 mighty battle barges, just as the chapter warfleet was commencing its invasion of the Cadian system. The Subjugators threw themselves straight into the conflict, during which the Third Company distinguished itself by triggering a plasma reactor overload that destroyed one of the Romelius-class starforts orbiting Cadia, at the very moment that the forces of chaos gained control of it. Only a handful of the Third Company escaped the subsequent explosion, but their heroic sacrifice undoubtedly saved the lives of thousands of Imperial defenders on the surface of Cadia, who would otherwise have found themselves facing the might of the Starfort's guns. However, the Subjugators were thrown into a state of disarray by this loss, and the 1st and 5th Companies took heavy casualties during the siege itself, notably in the defense of Khazar Galan and the subsequent reguard action during the desperate Terran retreat, and were in serious need of resupply. The Subjugators were a recently found chapter, and as such, maintained only a small amount of surplus gene seed. The loss of 168 battle brothers who had fallen during the siege was a terrible blow to the chapter, particularly as the Subjugators' apothecaries were for the most part unable to recover the gene seed of the fallen. In the latter stage of the war, the Imperial forces on Cadia were forced to abandon Khazar Patrox and retreated towards the sea, where they hoped to make their final stand in Khazar Galan. With Khazar Patrox fallen, a command and control structure was soon non-existent. The retreat from Khazar Patrox saw the most intense fighting of the war, with many thousands of lives given up so that the bulk of the Imperial forces might escape. The Imperials managed to make it to the sea, leaving behind thousands of dead, their bodies defiled by the blasphemous Chaos Horde. The Imperial ground forces fled aboard the transportation ships across the sea, forced to abandon the bulk of their heavy equipment. A company of the Space Marines from the Subjugators, who had been so reduced by combat as to threaten the very survival of their chapter, chose to also make a final stand there, vowing to evacuate only when all else was lost. And those were 40 facts on the Subjugators chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to share it with your friends and thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. It's $1 a month. Now, what's interesting about the Subjugators chapter is if you guys have watched the Astartes short fan film project, if you haven't, link in the description. Just check out on YouTube, type in Astartes, and it's going to take you to, there's like a 4-part series so far of just like probably the best Space Marine animation you're ever going to see. But that Space Marine chapter by the creators is said to be their own Space Marine chapter. They created it. It's completely theirs. But in my opinion, and what I think is really happening, just because they don't want GW to go and attack them or anything like that, just because they're creating something so amazing, I think that chapter is the Subjugators. And the reason I say that is because the team themselves has said that they are an Imperial Fist successor chapter, just like the Subjugators. They wear like the same like greenish color as the Subjugators. Now you could make the argument that it's kind of like bluish, but it's the colors that seem to fit the chapter, and at the same time they just showcase how a Space Marine is just a killing angel. Like he is very methodical in the way he kills, and he doesn't really care who he hits. He just knows that if somebody's shooting at him, he's gonna get rid of that thing. And of course, if you reach part 4, you see who they're fighting. They're fighting some type of like Xenos, and that Xenos might be the Selkin. It seems like it's some type of like humanoid creature. So that's my theory. Also, the actual icon that is on one of the shoulder plates is that of a fist. So my guess is that they're the Subjugators, or at least a chapter inspired by the Subjugators. Check that out if you guys haven't done so. If you guys have any suggestions, comment down below, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.